Okay. Okay, so your Chemo greetings, yet I say we thank you once again for tuning in. For those who are unfamiliar, I'm Odwirafo Kwesi Ranehempata Akan Odwirafo of Akwamu Mine Maroka, Etifimudi Akwamu Nation in North America within Odwiraman, the Purified Nation, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, African Black people in the Western Hemisphere. So, what I want to go over tonight is we are coming up on what we call Apoo Afahye, and Apoo Afahye in the Akan culture, Akan language and culture from Ghana and Ivory Coast, is a term that describes a specific 13-day observance, a 13-day festival. So for those who are unaware, so we practice Hoodoo, which is Akan ancestral religion in North America. If you look on this YouTube page, you will see that we produced a documentary film called Hoodoo, Akan ancestral religion in North America. So we show, and we are the first to show through scholarship, as well as, ritual practice, of course, but we've published on this and released the film as well, proving that Hoodoo is the Akan tradition. So some people, for example, were aware that Voodoo is the Ewe tradition, preserved in North America. The Juju tradition is the Yoruba tradition, preserved in North America. The Hoodoo tradition is actually the Akan ancestral religion, preserved in our blood circles when we were forced into the Western Hemisphere. We continue to practice as Akan people, those of us who were taken from the regions of contemporary Ghana and Ivory Coast, forced into North America. We maintained our ancestral religious practices, Akan ancestral religion, under the Akan word Ndu, which means medicine from roots, trees, and plant life. It also means to become heavy with the spirit through spirit possession and spirit communication. It also means to have a presentiment or foreboding, so you can see what's unfolding spiritually, so you can make ritual, adjustments to address, everything in life. So Hoodoo, also dealing with root work and so forth, medicine, roots, trees, and plant life, Ndu, from the Nduwa, which are the trees, the plant life. So the Ndu, meaning medicine, comes from the Nduwa, the roots, the trees, the plant life, and so forth. But of course, all the connotations of spirit possession, becoming heavy with the spirit, all these different things, that encapsulates the practice. It is Akan ancestral religion under the Akan term Ndu. It became popularly known as Ndu, later to be pronounced Hoodoo. So we practice Akan ancestral religion because that's who we are, under the practice of Hoodoo. Now, so of course, when we were forced over here, we continued our ancestral religious practices. We follow a certain ritual calendar. Apoo Afahye, as practiced in Ghana, we continued that practice. So around the time of the vernal equinox, the 12 hours of sunlight, 12 hours of darkness, the second balancing point of the year, that is the spring equinox. That's a balancing point for Asase Afua, the fertile earth mother, and so forth. And this is a time for ritual renewal, ritual recalibration. We've always done that. So in North America, we continued that practice. We place it around the vernal equinox. So for us, our 13-day Apoo Afahye observance is from March 13th through the 25th, or March 12th through the 24th, depending on the year. This year is March 13th through the 25th. So, but in the midst of that is March 20th, and this year, March 20th, is the day of the balancing point, the equinox in the Northern Hemisphere. So, let me expand this a little bit. So, let me show you on our page what we're dealing with and why we have this symbolism here. And of course, if you have any questions, you can post them in the chat room. All right. Okay, so when you go to our website, you'll see that we have information about Apoo as well as Obrajira. Obrajira is our New Year observance, which is a 7-day observance around the time of the autumn equinox, September 16th through the 22nd, or September 17th through the 23rd, depending on the year. And the final day, the 7th day, is our New Year's Day. So the autumn equinox, whether it's the September 22nd or September 23rd, that is the New Year's Day. That is a time for harvest, but it's also a seeding time, a conception time. So the conception time or the harvest time, that is the beginning. That's the first balancing point of the year when there's 12 hours of sunlight, 12 hours of darkness. That is September 22nd or 23rd. That's the time of the conception. You harvest your fruits and so forth, but then you take the seeds out and plant. That planting of the seed is a conception. Then 6 months later, we're at the midpoint of our year. That is March 20th, 19th, 20th, depending on the year. That is the second balancing point, and that is the sprouting time. So that's a new beginning. So Obrajira for us is a 7-day observance in September. And then Apoo, as we see here, is the 13-day observance of purification in March. So we talk about here, it says Akan Akan people in Techi Mine and Wenchi, areas of Ghana, West Afurakani, Africa, celebrate the festival called Apoo. This festival is called Aliye in the Sefwi area, in Sefwi Wenchi in Ghana, and is celebrated by the Akan of the Asona Abusia, the Asona clan in that region. The reason we put that information there is because we are of the Asona clan within Akan culture. We reestablished the Apoo observance in North America a number of years ago. And then we found out years later that it was the Asona people who reestablished that festival in Ghana. So we were led by our Asona clan ancestresses and ancestors. There are 7 great clans in Akan culture, Metric clans. All Akan people are descended from one of those 7 clans. My particular clan, Metric clan, is the Asona Abusia, or the Asona clan and so forth. And it was within the Asona clan that observance was established on the continent, millennia ago. And our same Asona Nsamanfo directed us, or ancestral spirits directed us to reestablish this practice here in North America. But what's key about that is it says Apoo is from the root po, meaning to reject. Apoo Afahye is a 13-day observance dedicated to the ritual purging of spiritual, cultural, and social ills in self and society. It is dedicated to the eradication of disorder and its purveyors, human and non-human, physical and non-physical, individual and communal. So then we get into some more details about that, but that's the reason it's named Apoo. It's dealing with purging, purification, and thus leading to renewal, recalibration, and so forth. This is a time when the earth is balancing itself, especially you're in the northern hemisphere. And let me pull up this document right quick. We did a presentation a few weeks back. Let's see. Okay. We did a presentation a few weeks back dealing with the hoodoo origins of Black History Month. But we introduced this notion of the Afurakani, or African ancestral ritual calendar as preserved in North America. So when we have certain sacred ritual practices that we preserved for millennia, we preserve them in North America, but sometimes they went under different names. But when you look at the time of the year, we preserve these practices that we've had for millennia. So for example, we're going to show why we show this sacred cosmogram. But when you look at March 20th, the spring equinox, that's a sacred time of the year for us. It's the sprouting time. In North America, it's a time of quote unquote spring cleaning, purification. So you will see in homes and, in our homes and Black culture and so forth, it's a time for spring cleaning, cleanup week and so forth, cleaning the home, ritually purifying the home. That's a hoodoo practice, even taking purgative herbs, or some people cod liver oil for their children and so forth, fasting. All these things were part of our ritual practice. Some of our people, even though some of them fell away from ancestral religious practices, but they still maintain certain things that we continue to do. We are simply returning back to the fullness of this practice. It is natural for us to move at this specific time of the year when the earth is shifting, the energy is shifting. We move in harmony with the earth, no different than plant life and animal life. In the wintertime, the leaves fall off the trees, the snow comes and so forth, birds fly south for the winter, bears go into hibernation and so forth. They're living in harmony with the shift in cycles of earth. Our bodies go along with earth as well. When the warmth comes back, when the green, sprouts start coming forward and so forth, the birds return, the bears come out of hibernation and so forth. We do the same thing. Our bodies shift with the energy of earth. If you get out of harmony with that, you have physical problems, physical imbalance, emotional imbalance, which is linked to, hormonal imbalances and so forth. It can lead to various other kinds of imbalance, even sometimes spiritual discordance, receptivity to discordant energy that otherwise you would easily repel with no problem. Just like if your spiritual immunity is up, it's no different than your physical immunity. If your physical immunity is fine, you can walk in the midst of people coughing and, having all kinds of viral agents, taking them down, and they're calling in sick from work and so forth. You walk through the office, breezing through, you go home, your family member is sick, you have no problem because it just bounces right off of you. Your immune system is not compromised. But if you compromise your immune system by being out of balance, then the slightest viral agent that normally would bounce off of you with ease, it can take you down, and then you're suffering from some, flu-like symptoms, aches, pains, and everything else. So when you get in harmony spiritually, it's the same thing. Your spiritual immunity, when it's strong, you can repel the negative projections of individuals and or entities, discarnate or carnate. If your spiritual energy is compromised, then of course, negative individuals' projections, whether it's deliberate or not deliberate, or they're doing something ritually against you, but even when people are not doing anything ritually, but their projections towards you are discord and negative, projections and so forth, your immune system spiritually is weak. You're bombarded with that. You're overwhelmed by it. It leads to not only spiritual discordance, but it can manifest as physical ailments. So we've always understood that. So it's natural to purify yourself, cleanse yourself around this time. So let's look at this cosmogram right here, because it's a sacred cosmogram. It's called the Afurakani, and it represents the different positions of the solar energy. Let me pull this up. Now, very often when you see this cosmogram, a similar representation of that, you find in the Congo tradition, the Bakongo people, the Dikenga, that's what they call it in the Congo tradition, the Dikenga Dia Congo, and it's a sacred cosmogram, and it represents the 4 positions of the sun, and they have their own interpretation of that. In the Akan tradition, we have the same symbol, and many groups have a similar symbol. As you can see on the right, you have the air element, where the yellow circle is, that's akin to sunrise, the air element. The red circle is akin to noon and so forth, the most fiery time of the day, hottest time of the day, most energy. The sunset, where the white circle is, that is akin to the water element. And then the black sun going into the underworld and so forth, that is the earth element. So the sunset, black circle is akin to, midnight. But during the course of the year, when we look at the water element, when the sun sets and quote unquote penetrates the western horizon and goes into the underworld, that is akin to a seed being planted in the ground. So that is the conception time. The sun is quote unquote falling. So it's the time of fall. This is akin to the autumn equinox, September 22nd, September 23rd. It is the end of the warm cycle. You're going from the fiery energy of the summer. You're going towards the fall, the cooling down and so forth, the end of the warm cycle, the beginning of the cool cycle. So in Akan culture, we say, Afe Shiapa, the ends of the year have met. The end of one cycle, beginning of the next. So the warming cycle is ending, the cooling cycle is beginning. You harvest that which is fallen from the trees and so forth, and plants. Then you take the seeds and you plant them. The sun goes into the underworld and so forth. At sunset, during the fall, that's a conception time. You plant the seeds, they go into the quote unquote underworld, and then they start to germinate. And eventually they begin to root and go deep down in the darkness, roots reaching deep down in the soil for nutrients and water and so forth. So when the sun sets, goes into the underworld, autumn equinox, when someone transitions in our culture, we say they have crossed the waters. They have crossed the river. In ancient Kemet, they talk about crossing the river to get to the Duat, the land of the ancestresses and ancestors. And the sacred boat of the great ferry boat divinity is the Ma'a boat, and the male deity Ma'a governs that boat that crosses the river and goes into the underworld, while at sunrise, you see the female divinity Ma'at, the female deity of divine law and balance, at sunrise when the sun's rising up. But when the sun is setting and crossing the rivers to get to the Duat and the underworld, that is governed by the male deity of divine law, which is Ma'a. So you see the waters and we go under. Going into the waters is going under. That's akin to going to sleep. It's also akin to going under with regard to spirit possession, spirit communication, and divination. So that's a beginning. That's a conception. Then we go deep down in the darkness. That's midnight. That's rooting. But it's also the winter solstice. December 20th, December 21st, darkest time of the year, darkest time of the night, which is midnight and so forth. The roots going deep down in the darkness to grab the nutrients they need. And then eventually the roots start pushing up and break through the surface of the soil. That happens at March 21st, the springtime, the sprouting time, the return of the greenery and so forth, renewal, recalibration. During the day, that is sunrise, when the sun breaks through the surface of the earth, returns from the underworld and illuminates the path and so forth. So we're going through this cycle. We go through it every day, but we also go through it spiritually. Now, in our Akan tradition, you see the Okra Komwadie, and we have this sacred symbol. We also have the SUSUW symbol that is in between. So you have the cross structure, which is the Okra, the soul, divine consciousness, and then the diagonal cross structure, which is just the SUSUW, the spirit. And when you look at the Okra Komwadie symbol, and this is just a golden version of that, you see the cross structure in the middle. That's the Okra, the soul. And then you also see the SUSUW symbol like you see here on the end. And you have the spirit, body, and the soul united. The Adinkra symbol, Ohini Iniwa, unites all of those 8 points, the 4 cardinal points and the midpoints. That is akin to our sacred year. You have the equinoxes and the solstices. You have, let me scroll back up. You have sunrise, but that's also the spring equinox. You have the summer solstice, June 22nd. That's also noon and so forth. You have the sunset. That's the autumn equinox, September 22nd. You have midnight, winter solstice, December 20th and so forth. But then you also have the midpoints. And these are sacred points as well. 40 days after a sacred equinox or solstice point, you have these midpoints. And we went over this in our recent broadcast, but the midpoint between March equinox, spring equinox, and summer solstice is May 1st. The whites in the Arab Spring call that the celebration of the Maypole or May Day, and that was a fertility festival that they stole from us. In our culture, we still maintain that. In North America, we established what is called Memorial Day. That was established by Black people at the end of the Civil War when we buried our deceased and had an ancestral observance. The whites in Arab Spring took that over and then they pushed it to March 31st, but originally it was on May 1st. So that's a sacred ancestral observance that we still maintain. And then we go through each one of the midpoints and so forth in between the equinoxes and solstices to show that we have an ancestral ritual calendar in North America that reflects our ancient ritual calendar. And each point, the equinoxes, solstices, and the midpoints, we have ancestral ritual practices to realign ourselves. Now, hold on one second. Okay, so I want to play something for you. Okay, so this is a clip from our film, Hoodoo, Akan, Ancestral Religion in North America. I just want to show you some of the imagery. Okay, so I don't have the sound up for that right now, but that is the symbol. And as we said, it's not just for the Bakongo people, the Akan people have this, the Chokwe people have it, a number of different groups have that. It's worn as a symbol for the soul, Yokra, the divine consciousness, worn on the as a disc for the ritual practitioners who cleanse the soul. It's also a asuman, or talisman. The gold represents the purificatory energy of the sun that we use to purify ourselves. That fire burns away impurities and so forth. And we show there's a number of different things associated with the symbolism and identity associated with that. But even though we were stripped away from West Afuraitkaitnit, when we saw the solar parhelion, which they'll call a sundog and so forth, imagine being, for the first time, imagine you're brought into North America, enslaved, in chains, like in July. You're taken to an auction block, sold into enslavement, taken to a plantation and so forth. It's like 100 degrees. You're in Virginia. You're enslaved on the plantation. You're plotting to, overthrow the so-called enslaver, kill them, and free yourself from enslavement. So you're connecting with other people. You're plotting, checking out the terrain and so forth. And a number of weeks go by, and then all of a sudden something takes place. You start noticing that the leaves start changing colors. They used to be green, everything was green. They start turning reddish, yellowish, brownish. Then they become brittle, and then they start falling off of the trees. And within weeks, all the trees are bare. None of them have leaves, there's nothing green. And then you also notice something else, the air starts feeling different. It starts getting cold, something you've never experienced before. The only time you experience something kind of cool when you jumped in a river and it was different. You got a little cool from the heat in your village and so forth, but you've never felt cold before. You've never experienced anything like it. And then something else happens. You wake up one morning and you walk outside and everything is covered in white. And there's fluffy white stuff falling out the sky. All of the grass is gone, it's covered in white. All the trees, there are no leaves. There are no leaves on the plants. All the birds flew away. Some of the other animals are gone and so forth. So you're in a place where there's no life, no greenery, it's cold, it's white, you can't see any plant life and so forth. Everything's dead and so forth. You don't know where you are. You're trying to figure out what part of Earth are we in. So there's certain things you're trying to figure out and you're trying to navigate. But when we looked up in the sky, one thing that was constant, the Oriya, the sun is still shining, even though it's not at the same capacity as we're accustomed to. The Osarane, or the moon, is still coming forward and going through its phases. We still see the Nsoroma, we still see the stars, and we're still, of course, on Asase, still on Earth, even though things have shifted. And some of the plant life and animal life is different things we've never seen before. But when we looked up in the sky and saw the solar parhelion, when we saw that, let's go back real quick. Then we were reminded of our sacred cycles. Because that's the origin, that's the sacred origin of that symbol. That's where it comes from. These 4 different positions of the solar disk, the energy, even you can see from the inside to the outside, you'll see the darkness, red, yellow, white light, and so forth, and the different positions. It renewed us. We recognize, okay, we're still, we haven't gone into a desolate part of the spirit realm. We're still alive on Earth. We're just in the part we've never considered before. We have to learn how to navigate so we can free ourselves and establish some independence. So we still utilize this symbol. And then once the weather changed again and we started realizing that the animals were coming back, the snow began to melt, the greenery came and so forth. It warmed up. Our bodies started feeling better. We realized that this is an extreme example of a seasonal cycle, similar to the seasonal cycles on the continent, but much more extreme. Very hot, and then 6 months later, extremely cold, and then balancing points in between. So it's the same cycle, but it's just super extreme. And we learned how to navigate our way through these cycles. And since they're so extreme, we know we need to take in certain plant life, mineral life, move with the animals and so forth, shift our energy so we can take advantage of the fullness of this energy as the Earth shifts, or else we're imbalanced. And if we think about the nature of our community, look at the health of our community, physically and spiritually. And when it's physically, we're imbalanced, obesity, disease, chronic diseases, and so forth, and spiritually, we're discordant, then of course, how can that lend itself in a positive capacity to what's most important, ama ancestral nation building restoration? You can't have nation building, restoration, building ourselves politically, economically, socially, militarily, and so forth when the people are out of balance physically and spiritually. So now, what is a way to get ourselves back in balance? And what are some of the ritual means by which we do that? Okay. Now, let's Just give me 1 second. In fact, let me pull up a different. And of course, if you have any questions, you can post them in the chat room. Okay. So one of the things that a major form of ritual practice that we engage in is what we call SUSUW, which is the Akan term, as well as the ancient Kemetic term for meditation. Now, ritual meditation, ritual song, ritual dance, ritual chant, ritual movement, a number of different things that we engage in on a regular basis, but central to them is this notion of SUSUW. So some, ritual dances engaged in at certain times for ritual practices, certain, times of the day, certain times of the year, certain times of a 42-day cycle and so forth. The same with ritual chant, ritual drumming, ritual dance and so forth. But SUSUW, so ritual dance is Asao, ritual drumming is Achini and so forth. But ritual meditation is SUSUW, and that's on a daily basis. But we need a proper definition of what that actually is, not what the European definition is. So in the course that we teach it's not a course on meditation. It's a course to certify you so that you can conduct meditation sessions and get paid for that. So you are a certified meditation instructor. And because people have become more open to that practice, even in the mainstream, you have schools, even public schools, charter schools, private schools, elementary, as well as, high school, as well as colleges and so forth. But then to, utilize meditation at the beginning of the day and halfway through the day for youth to get, aligned and become balanced and more focused, and they have greater they enhance learning outcomes because of that. People have workshops at their places of business where they have their employees come out. They have a conference or a seminar. They will start it off with a meditative session to enhance work productivity. People in homeless shelters or women's shelters or different human services agencies, they bring people out, to help the clients, help them get more focused, overcome anxiety, overcome, negative eating habits or drug addiction or balancing hormones, a number of different things that people utilize that for. And now it's becoming so normalized, a normative practice that, regular everyday organizations consistently bring people out to do that. This is the reason that we certify people. We've been teaching meditation, SUSUW, for over 20 years, been practicing for over 30 as part of ancestral religious practice. So we have a certification course that we deal with that. And this is part of that introduction. So you can see we have a different definition of a proper definition of what meditation is. So let's look at the first part of the definition. So on the right, you'll see that SUSUW is the term for meditation, and Akan, and it means to take measure. To measure, to measure the depth of something, to sound, to search or measure the depth of, to calculate the capacity of, to think, imagine, suppose, presume, to think upon, to reflect upon, to consider, to meditate, to contemplate, and so forth. It's about measuring the depth of something, calculating the capacity of something. When you're calculating the capacity of something, you're taking measure of something, and internally, you're taking measure of the nature of your spirit. So SUSUW, to measure, and when you're calculating the capacity of something in this context, the nature of your spirit. So SUSUW, is a reduplication of the term SUSUW. And when you look at the term SUSUW in ancient Kemet, it is a unit of measure, as you can see here. Let me expand this a little bit. All right. So SUSUW reduplicated to SUSUW. So it's the same term that we use in ancient Khanate Kemet that we use in Akan culture, because it's the same language. We practice the same tradition. We invoke the same divinities by the same names. And you'll even see the term SUSUW also means drink or to drink in ancient Kemet. And you'll find in Akan that SUSUW also means drink or to drink, like a drink of water and so forth. But it's also when you fill up a vessel with water that is taking measure. And then, of course, on the physical plane, the drink, the water is a clear, formless substance, and is representative of the SUSUW, which is the spirit body, a clear, energetic, formless substance. Now, but even when you look at the term meditate itself, you see that meditate comes from the Proto-Indo-European root med, meaning to take measure. The word in Akan, SUSUW, means to measure the depth of, calculate the capacity of, comes from su, meaning to measure and so forth. So, and it also means to reflect upon and contemplate upon and so forth. So we've always understood that reflection is a form of measurement. And we measure our thoughts, intentions, and actions against the standard of divine order as expressed through divine law. So it's always been a system of measure. So that's why in ancient Kemet, the term meditate, in English, the term meditate comes from the Proto-Indo-European, quote unquote, root meaning med, meaning to take measure, because they stole the concept from our people. Even the word measure, the Proto-Indo-European root of measure is meh, and of course it means to measure. And to go further with that, even the word meh in Proto-Indo-European, we said so-called because it's not Proto-Indo-European. They stole that term from ancient Kemet. Meh is the term that they say in English is the cubit. That is the central unit of measurement in ancient Kemet. Just like you have an inch or a foot or a yard, and these are central units of measurement. So you can establish, roads and, build structures and high rises and skyscrapers and anything else. You have to have a unit of measurement. The central unit of measurement in ancient Kemet was, in English, they'll call it the cubit, but we called it the meh. And this is why meh is the root of measure in English, and meh is the root of med or meditate and so forth, to take measure. So nothing that they talk about is, anything that they created. They've stolen the concept of measurement with regard to ritual practice from our people. Now, but when we talk about SUSUW, so when we engage in the SUSUW process and we invoke a divinity, or we evoke an ancestor or ancestress, or we are aligned with the divinity that governs our head when we sit in the form of SUSUW to attune to the force that governs our head, that divinity that governs our head, our ka or kaet, the male divinity or female divinity that governs our head and so forth. We engage in the process of SUSUW. We align our thoughts, intentions, and actions with the divinity that governs us so we can align with our function that we came into the world to execute. We are cells within the great divine body of the Supreme Being as Black people and Black people only. So just like your cells have a specific function to execute, Your liver cells serve their parent organ or their parent deity, the liver. When they serve their parent deity, the liver, they're serving you, the supreme being, at the same time. Your heart cells serve the heart deity, their parent divinity or parent organ. When they serve the heart, their parent deity, they serve you, the supreme being, at the same time. Black people, as well as plant life, animal life, mineral life, and Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, African Black human life, we are cells within the great divine body of Amen and Amenet, the great mother and father, supreme being. And as cells, we have specific functions to execute in the world. When we execute those functions based on the divinity that governs us, we're serving the great being at the same time. So some people have fiery energy, just like your organs. Your liver has an oxidation function and so forth. Your kidneys have a purificatory function. Your lungs have that fiery purificatory function. Each organ has its own function. Some are fiery, some are more watery, some are airy, some are earthy, and so forth. We, based on our energy complexes, you can tell what kind of divinity that governs the individual, but of course you can communicate with that divinity. But based on that energy complex, we execute a certain function in creation. And when we execute that function harmoniously, we're in alignment individually, but we're also in alignment with creation and also plant life, animal life, mineral life, and other Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, African Black people. And when we're aligned with one another, we can make good decisions. We can engage in building, empowerment, physically, spiritually, socially, culturally, economically, politically, militarily, and otherwise for nation building restoration. If we're not aligned properly, we're self-destructive and easily controlled by our enemies. So, but when we talk about SUSUW, we're talking about contemplation upon reflecting upon. So that's much more vast than what is typically, talked about. So let me give a different example. And what I'm going to pull up right quick is and this is one of the books that we address and examine in our course, the SUSUW course. So you learn about how to conduct basic meditation sessions, which you can conduct on an introductory fashion. It's a 4-week course. And once you're credentialed after that 4 weeks, in fact, the next course begins March 17th. We'll talk about that at the end of the session. But you can sign up for that 4-week course. You're credentialed, you receive your certificate, and you can utilize that to enter into contracts. And people typically pay about $100, $200, $300 for someone to come out and conduct a half an hour or hour session, whether it's youth or adults, it's at a place of employment or a community organization or women's shelter or school or some organization and so forth. But once they see that you have a credential, then that satisfies the funding sources and they can cut the check and you can, engage in business. But we do it on an introductory fashion. We give them the basics so that they can engage in a basic meditation session. We don't go deeply into cosmology for the average group. If they want to ask you about that offline separately, they can do that. But this is for any mainstream going to our youth, their schools or places of business and so forth, wherever our people are, and they can engage in basic SUSUW meditative practices, and they can begin to manifest the immediate benefits: lowering blood pressure, decreasing anxiety, decreasing and overcoming addictions, hormonal balancing and so forth, enhancing learning, activities, enhancing productivity, also enhancing learning outcomes and so forth. A number of different things that you have an immediate, tangible benefit when you start engaging the SUSUW process on a regular basis. One of the books that we go over, I've published 31 books, and one of the books that we go over in the session is our book, Ankh, The Origin of the Term Yoga, Karakasa, Origin and Nature of the Chakra. Now, when we're talking about that, and we start showing the original origin of these things, we take it out of what, this whole notion of Hinduism and so forth and Buddhism. We were engaged in these practices thousands of years before Hinduism or Buddhism or the White Narrow Spring existed on Earth, Europeans or Asians. Here you see the scribe Neb-Meru-Tef sitting before the divinity Akan in the form of a sacred animal totem, but this is a spiritual force, a spiritual entity. So if you had walked into the room at this time, you would see Neb-Meru-Tef seated with his legs crossed, and he's engaged in SUSUW, meditation, communicating with a divinity whose sacred animal totem is the Akan, or the so-called baboon, and so forth. We're showing one of the major meditative postures, and we show that the An or Aran, the sacred baboon and so forth, is a sacred ancestral animal totem for the ancestral spirits. Just like you can have just like people on a mundane level have a mascot for certain teams and so forth. There are certain animals that carry the same energy of a clan in the animal realm. So if you have a clan, a leopard clan, people of the leopard clan, like in Akan culture, the Osebo is the leopard, Osebowa is the leopardess and so forth. The people of the Bretuo clan, their sacred animal totem is the leopard, Osebo. So if they want to communicate with their people, they will send a leopard physically or spiritually in a dream and so forth, and that spirit animal will show up, and you know that's from the ancestresses and ancestors of your clan because the sacred animal totem is the leopard. If you're of the Asona Abusia, the Asona clan, the major animal totem is Kwakwa Dabi, the so-called raven or crow. So our Nsamafo will send us the raven or the crow at certain critical junctures in life to bring a message of correction, admonition, warning, and so forth. They'll show up near your car or show up near your home or show up in the middle of the street and so forth, or near your job and so forth, or in a dream or in a spiritual practice to communicate directly. So in the same context, the deities have quote unquote animal totems or sacred animals that are like batteries that carry their energy, and they send these animals to carry that energy to the population. That's just one way that's done. Of course, plants, there are plant totems, there are mineral totems, there are animal totems, and there are human totems. We are the totems for the divinity. So some of us are children of fire divinities, some of us are children of water divinities, some of us are children of earth divinities, and so forth. So we are the human totem for them, Black people only, of course. But then animals are categorized by their energy complex, and they carry the energy of specific deities. They show up in the symbolism. Plants are categorized by their energy complex. They carry the energy of certain deities, and they'll say this deity takes this specific plant when you're making ritual medicine. Same is true of minerals. So we were showing that, but we just wanted to pull that up because we're talking about krakra. The origin of the term kakra or chakra comes from ancient Kemet. We go into detail about that. You see the 7 sets of nerve bundles or nerve ganglia, the 7 knots of nerves and so forth. These 7 knots are governed by 7 divinities. There's a ritual invocation to the 7 knots of the 7 kasu and so forth, 7 divinities. We talk about that. And then they're also called the 7 chasu. Hold on a second. Just want you to see this image real quick. So So these 7 chasu, these 7 wisdom divinities, chasu means wisdom, wise wisdom. So chas, to order, arrange, command, chasa, wise or learned, chas, knowledge, wisdom, speech. And you have the 7 chas deities, chasu plural, the 7 divine masters of wisdom who helped Tahuti, the divinity of divine wisdom, to plan the universe. The names were Neferhat, Aperpehui, Nemdesharu, Ka, Bak, Kek, and Sign. And there's a ritual invocation to these 7 divinities, the 7 children of the female divinity, Mehit, Urat, and Tahuti. And they invoke these 7 deities and they talk about how we align with them and so forth. So those are the 7 deities that govern the 7 kara, 7 divinities that govern the 7 quote unquote chakras and so forth. The whites and offspring are not going to give you that. We give this information in detail. Now, this portion you wouldn't share with the average. If you're teaching or conducting a meditation session, you wouldn't go into all of that. You would just teach them about SUSUW meditation, take them through a practice so they can experience that energy, balance themselves, equilibrate themselves, derive an immediate benefit, learn how to recalibrate themselves, balance their hormones, balance their emotions, reduce their anxiety, enhance their learning outcomes, all the different things that are beneficial. But if they wanted more after the session was over, then you could connect and teach them more. But when you go into a session, it's very introductory. But when you come to the course, we give you the detailed information so you can have a full context of understanding what's actually going on. Now, but there are 7 physically, the 7 nerve ganglia, the 7, bundles of nerves and so forth, the 7 knots. Those are the shrines for these 7 divinities within the body. Now let me pull up I want to give you a quick I want to show you something about SUSUW meditation. We talked about a difference between SUSUW meditation with regard to when you have the proper definition, SUSUW, to reflect upon, to calculate the capacity of something, living in harmony with cycles, as we've talked about. Now, when we talked about we've always lived in harmony with plant life, animal life, mineral life, and so forth as Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people. Even when we were forced into North America, we found it prudent once we learned what these extreme cycles were. And we were like, okay, this is how things unfold in this part of the world. And once we learned that, we're like, okay, the cycles are more extreme, but we must get in harmony with the cycles. If we do not, look at the nature of our community now, even in relationships, when people are having, explosive arguments or, people being depressed or anxious or dishonest or withdrawn or a number of different things, hormonal imbalances, emotional imbalances. When you balance yourself physically and spiritually, your communication shifts and it's better for the relationship. It's better for the children if you have children in the relationship and so forth. It's better for the clan. It's better for the community overall. When we talk about SUSUW, when we say we're about to engage in the SUSUW process, that's focused observation. When you listen to music, that's a form of SUSUW. What you're doing is you're blocking everything else out and you're attuning to these sound vibrations that generate images and thoughts and everything within you. If you're watching television or looking at a screen, you're blocking everything else out and you're focused on what's being seen, these images and sounds that are coming forth. Even if somebody says your name, you may not even hear it because you're focused, you have focused observation, you're reflecting upon, contemplating, and so forth. If you're engaged in what this young man is doing, it's a form of SUSUW. It's focused observation. It's taking measure, taking in the entire scene, taking measuring the depth of something, the field, the space, the context, calculating the capacity of something, and measuring your thoughts, intentions, and actions in harmony with divine order. So let's look at how he's moving. Now, this is in Uganda. When you see these cattle with these great horns and so forth, when you see the sacred symbolism of ancient Kemet, and they have cattle with great horns and the solar disk is in between, that wasn't, that wasn't symbolism or, purely symbolic. That was actual fact. We're just not accustomed to seeing that. Now, when you see someone moving in that fashion, hold on a second. Okay, when you see someone moving like that, if we were to place somebody from our community, if you were dropped off in the middle of those cattle like that and told to walk through and reach somebody at the other end, if you didn't have the capacity to be balanced and focused and have focused observation, most people would start screaming or yelling or becoming anxious instead of living in harmony with nature as it is and moving in a harmonious fashion. He simply moved in a harmonious fashion. He grew up in this environment. He learned how to harmonize and so forth. He walked through. The animals were in harmony with him. There was no problem. If you drop somebody from America, some of our people here in the midst of that and said, okay, I'm going to leave, I'll meet you on the other side, our people will start running, screaming, yelling. They will cause agitation within that herd. The herd will get agitated and start moving and maybe even gore you with the horns and so forth, or stampede you, and it will be over. Because we're not accustomed to that, because we haven't seen that, and we haven't learned how to harmonize with that. But naturally, a part of his culture growing up, ritual practice and so forth, how do you harmonize with animal life? Just like you learn how to harmonize with mineral life and plant life through medicine and everything else, how do you harmonize with animal life? If you can move through a situation like that and not create any disorder and be in perfect harmony with that, then you've learned to engage the SUSUW process. He was engaged in SUSUW, focused observation, measuring the depth of something, calculating the capacity of something, contemplating upon, thinking upon, reflecting upon, and moving in a harmonious way. That's just another form of SUSUW. So you can sit down, engage in SUSUW. You can walk and engage in SUSUW when you're listening to music, when you're painting and so forth, creating art, engaging in creative innovation and so forth. These are different expressions of SUSUW. The things that we do on a regular basis, on a daily basis, if you're listening to music, watching television, looking on the computer, walking down the street, thinking about things, all of these are forms of SUSUW that we do every single day that we've been doing. The most dramatic expression of SUSUW on a mundane level is going to sleep at night. Because when you go to sleep, you're totally focused internally. Everything that's happening around you is blocked out, and you're totally focused on what's happening internally. And you're having a number of different experiences. And even if someone walks in the room and says something, you're not going to respond right away because you're having an internal focused observation. That's no different than sitting in ritual, closing your eyes, engaging in ritual communication with the ancestral spirits and divinities, or even if you're just focused on the divinity that governs the head on a basic level, you're totally internalized and you're focused. So we engage in SUSUW every single day, whether we're sleeping, different times of the day when we're awake and so forth. In our ancestral culture, we state and we recognize that anything that we do on a regular basis at certain times of the day, week, month, year, and so forth, or certain cycles, the mundane practices that we engage in daily, we intensify them in a ritual capacity to engage and take from that the optimal benefit. You can eat food every day and so forth, but sometimes you need to create an intensified form of that food in the context of medicine to purify yourself or remove some negative, toxin within you and so forth. So you take the food that you normally have, take it through a quote unquote alchemical process, give fire to it, transform it, turn it into a medicine. And when you put it in your system, it transforms you. So you meditate every day by sleeping, walking, listening to music, watching things, and so forth. Then you take that focus observation in a ritual context, intensify the power, evoke the Insumafu ancestral spirits, invoke the divinities, and you engage in a ritual practice. Now, so let's look at the time frame. And as a matter of fact, let me just show you this right quick. All right. Associated with these different midpoints, there are also ritual observances, there's diet, there's fasting, there's meditation, there's pouring libation, there's divination. There are different things. But when we focus on ritual purification at this particular time during the year, for us, for Aquamomine and Maroka Tifimu, the Aquamo Nation of North America, we have our 13-day observance. We have a fasting period for certain members and so forth from the 13th leading up into the autumn equinox, which is the 20th and so forth. So that's a time of purification. But everybody doesn't have to engage in the 7-day fast and so forth. You could choose to, at least on the day of the spring equinox, which is March 20th this year, which is next Yauda, which is next Thursday, Yauda, you can engage in, fasting on that particular day, because that is the day that the balancing of the earth takes place in the northern hemisphere. And when that balancing takes place, plant life is going to experience that, mineral life, animal life, we're going to experience it. It's a good time to fast and take that energy in and utilize that through a ritual context, through SUSUW, to rebalance yourself. So hold on 1 second. Okay. So when we talked about, you saw in the book, there's the 7 Chasu. And these are those 7 divinities: Bak, Sign, Kek. And let me expand them for you right quick. So we put them in the proper order according to the karakara, or so-called chakra and so forth. So Bak, which is falcon divinity and so forth, is in the first position. So when you saw in the book, it said the 7 masters of wisdom, 7 deities who assisted Tahuti, the divinity of divine wisdom, in organizing the world. And they're the 7 Chasu and so forth. And they're sons of that sacred cow divinity, Mehit Urat. And there's a sacred invocation that we had in the book there. These are those 7 deities. We just put them in the proper order according to the different karakara that they govern. So Bak is the first one, Sign is the second divinity, Kek is the third, who governs the throat and so forth. And we go through in the class that starts next Monday how Kek, for example, is the name of the divinity, but Kek is also the term for throat or neck in ancient Kemet. Bak is the name of the deity, and it's a falcon divinity and so forth, but that's also the falcon that protects the head of the sovereign. That's why it's the crown, kara kara, sign, sacred fish divinity, but also governs the two eyes and so forth. It's the third eye. So we go through each one of these 7 divinities. And Nefer Hat. And when you look at the names of the divinities, they will show you exactly the place in the body, the shrine in the body that they govern, and their ritual connotations, and the aspect of creation that they govern as well. It's tied up in the name and their relationship to one another as you read about them in the text. So we show who these 7 divinities are. And then there's also okay. In the context of these 7 SUSUW divinities, in the text, for example, in the Esna text, in the Edfu text, they talk about the 7 SUSUW who are assisting Tahuti with the governance of the world and so forth, and they govern the 7 knots. There are also 7 potter deities who are children of the potter divinity Kunim, the flat-horned ram-headed divinity, and I'll show an image of him in a second. The 7 Kunim, and they're invoked in the Esna text as well as the Edfu text in ancient Kemet. They talk about Kunim giving birth to the 7 Kunims, and they are great potter divinities, and they assist the 7 SUSUW and so forth. And these are the 7 Kunim divinities, Kunim Neb, and Kunim Seket Ashesepef, and Kunim Kaniti Tawit Ntoru. Scroll down a little bit. Kunim Kaniti Perak, Kunim Kaniti Anebef, Kunim Kaniti Nechem, Chem Amket, and Kunim Nehep, and so forth. So Kunim the potter, Kunim of the sweet, sweet life, and so forth. And we're showing their positions with regard to the 7 pots. Instead of saying 7 lotuses, like you were here in Hinduism, there are 7 potter divinities, and the 7 pots are the 7 quote unquote kara kara, the 7 chakras and so forth. And within those 7 pots, governed by these 7 potter deities, they have different energy complexes, and the 7 wisdom divinities work in alignment with them. In this particular link, we show the different metals like silver, copper, iron, tin, mercury, gold, electrum, that are connected to these 7 pots. And we go over that in the SUSUW Meditation Instructor Certification course, so you become aware of who these divinities are, how they govern the 7 kara, 7 chakras, these 7 sacred pots that you have within your body, what sacred metals govern them, the divinity that governs them, the wisdom spirits that govern them. And we invoke these divinities when we're pouring libation, engaged in meditation, ritual prayer. So even when you invoke them by name, you begin to align with that energy just by virtue of the fact that you invoke them by name. Just like if a Yoruba person invoked the Orisha by name, like Osanyin or Erinle or Ogun or Oshun or Oshosi and so forth, or in Akan, we invoke the Abosun by name, like Ajwa or Benna, Awusi, Essi, and Afi and so forth. When you invoke these forces in creation by name, you stimulate their shrines in your body, and the recalibration process already begins. Of course, you need to follow through with your ritual practice, whether it's ritual SUSUW, meditation, or asau, dance, or ritual adibisa, divination, or whatever you're engaged in. But starting with the invocation of their names in meditation begins to realign you. Now, Okay. But so for us, we start off on the 13th, and we start this process of, purification. Some of us will do a 7-day fast. Some people will wait until the day of the equinox to do the fast on that day, which is perfectly fine. That's for, our organization. But we do recommend that any Black people in the Western Hemisphere, these sacred 8 points of the year, the equinoxes, solstices, and the midpoints, we've always had sacred observances because these are sacred points within the year cycle and so forth, just like there's sacred points within the day. You rise with the sun at sunrise. You have your most fiery activity during the hottest time of the day. You begin to cool down when the sun sets, and then you go in the underworld, go to sleep, at midnight and so forth to recharge yourself, recalibrate. You're living in harmony with the natural cycle. Same thing with the yearly cycle. There's certain natural things you observe and so forth, but there are also ritual things we observe. So, but we recommend that Black people in the Western Hemisphere, on these sacred days, these sacred midpoints, we have established, for example, as we said, spring cleaning or cleanup week and so forth. That's a reflection of the ancient Apoo Afahye festival we've always engaged in around the equinox. May Day, we said, was Memorial Day, established by Black people in the so-called 1800s. We're just reprising the same ancestral observance that we would normally have 40 days after the equinox. We've established, quote unquote, Juneteenth. In reality, Juneteenth is the summer solstice. It's the day before the summer solstice. That's the summer solstice celebration that we've been practicing for thousands of years. 40 days after that is the midpoint, which is August 2nd. The whites and offspring started having the Day of the Dead around that time. We established Black August, which is a month-long ancestral evocation observance dealing with our freedom fighters and so forth, male and female. September 22nd is the spring autumn equinox. We have our New Year's observance, the 7-day New Year observance. That's the Akan New Year, Hoodoo New Year, and so forth. November 1st, 40 days after that, another ancestral observance. You'll see that Voodoo in North America, they have the Voodoo New Year at that time. That's a sacred midpoint. Then you have December 21st, the winter solstice. We went into detail about this, how there were individuals who established, Arthur Joseph Graham, as a matter of fact, established these 7 principles years before Maulana Karenga asked Karenga, hey, can you translate these into Swahili? We want to create a 7-day holiday between December 26th and January 1st. We have these 7 principles, but we want to translate each one into Swahili instead of using the English names. All they asked him to do was translate them into Swahili because he was teaching a Swahili class. He stole it and said he created Kwanzaa, he created the holiday, and he created the 7 principles. But in reality, other people did that years before they allowed him to see it. So, but that Kwanzaa event is really a winter solstice observance. And then 40 days after the winter solstice on December 21st is February 1st. The whites and offspring call that Groundhog's Day. But for us, that's 40 days after the autumn equinox. It's a midpoint. And so we established back in the 1940s, quote unquote, Negro History Month, which later became Black History Month and so forth, which is a month-long observance of, in reality, evoking the memories and practices and culture of our ancestresses and ancestors, to incorporate that culturally. So Black people in North America maintained the 8 sacred days, even though some of us don't even know why we did that, but they were all ancient hoodoo and voodoo and juju and wanga and ngengan and gullah and geechee ritual observances that we've maintained. So this time of the year is another one of those 8 points. So even if you don't do a full, you don't have to, of course, do a 13-day observance like Akan people do. That's unique to Akan people. But at least around the time of the equinox, you want to take advantage of the fact that the Earth is balancing in the Northern Hemisphere. 12 hours of sunlight, 12 hours of darkness is a great time to purify yourself so you can move into the next cycle in a balanced fashion. And there are certain things you can do purificatory. We can recommend certain books if you want to fast and purify yourself and take certain herbs to cleanse yourself and so forth to get ready for that process. Let me show this right quick. So, one thing that we just recently released. So you see, this is our new book, Odwirafo. So it's a 600-page book. You will see that the book is in color. It's 8.5 by 11. It is now available. Now there, and you'll see on the back, 12 of the 31 books I've published. We included these 12 books into one anthology, one volume. So that's why it's a very thick volume. We did it 8.5 by 11, made it larger so we can fit more information in. If we made it smaller, it would have been like 900 pages, but stretching it out, it's still 600 pages, so it's still big, but we could get more, information in there. Let me show you what's in it. It is on Amazon, but you can get a 30% discount if you order it directly from our website. Amazon, just like any bookseller, any distributor, they take 60% off the top. That's how they generate their funds. So if you're an author, you have a book and you sell your book for $10 or something. If you take it to a bookstore or a distributor, the bookstore will take 40%. So they'll sell it for 10. They will take $4 and give you $6. But if you send it through a distributor, which most bookstores don't let you give it to them directly, they'll say, give it to our distributor. We order from the distributor once a week. We pick all the books that we want from the different authors, and they send the books to us. So we won't have 100 authors coming in here asking if their book's sold. All the authors go to one distributor. They have hundreds of books, and we order directly from them. So if I took my book to a distributor that distributes to all the Black bookstores, they're going to take 60%, and then I get 40%. The same thing with Amazon. They take 60%, and they give you 40%, but then they also charge for printing as well. So, that's why books are a little bit, more expensive on the Amazon site, especially if they're in color like ours. But if you purchase them directly from someone's website, you can get it cheaper. So, and let me show you a couple of things. So when we showed this, the image for you saw the image for the broadcast tonight for the live stream. So we showed the Afurakani symbol, the talisman and so forth, sacred animal totem up here, the Opete, the vulture. Now, the images here you have, this is the creator of the universe, Ra, and the creatress of the universe, who is Ra'et, the creator and creatress. In this capacity, they are in the spirit realm, so they're called Afura and Afuraitkaitnit. And let's look at that. And this is taken directly from the book. So we published some of these books over the years, and then we expanded on them. And the expanded versions of all these books are what you have in this new 600-page volume. And just to give you an example of that, so the very first book that so 12 of the books I published all in one volume. And of course, we're going to have a volume 2 as well. But the very first book in this anthology is the book Afuraitkaitnit, The Origin of the Term Africa. And of course, we showed that the term Africa comes from Afuraitkaitnit. We're the first to prove that conclusively, and we show the cosmology behind it, show the name in the Medut and Tolo, the hieroglyphs and so forth. But which prior to our work, people were trying to say that Africa came from Scipio Africanus, a Roman general, or Leo Africanus, a historian, or it came from the Greeks, the Romans, the Phoenicians, the Arabs, Sanskrit, a number of different false etymologies, but we prove differently. So here you have Ra and Raet, the creator and creatress. In Vodun, they're called Da and Aida Huedo. In Akan, they're called Inyonkopon and Inyonkonton. In Yoruba, they're called Odumare and Oshumare, and so forth. So this is Ra, the creator and creatress, the divine living energy, animating all of creation and so forth, all natural things in creation. And as we're talking about the cosmology of Ra and Raed, when they move through flesh or through matter and so forth, when the spirit moves through matter, matter itself becomes the flesh of the spirit. So when energy moves through matter, matter becomes a house or place of residence, or the flesh of the spirit. And when the spirit of Ra and Raed move through the primordial earth, they become known as Afu Ra and Afuraet. So Afu Afu, flesh, meat, joint, member, and so forth. So you have Ra sailing across the sky in his solar boat. The solar disk, the Aten underneath the sun, sails across the sky from sunrise to sunset, and they show the falcon, an avian animal, a winged animal, and so forth. That's a sacred animal totem for Ra, but he is the divine living energy permeating creation. And Raed is the feminine expression of that as well. So, but when the sun sets in the west and goes into the underworld, the sacred symbolism shows him switch from a falcon-headed divinity, an avian animal, to a flat-horn ram divinity. And this is an image of him as Afura. He becomes Afura, Ra within the Afu, Ra within the flesh and matter and so forth. That's from the tomb of Ramesu I. This is from the tomb of Seti. When I was in the tomb of Seti in the Valley of the Kings in Kemet, I took this image. So this is Afura, an actual image from there in his night boat in the underworld. And you'll see the spelling here, and we encircled it just so you can see that this is Ra in his form of Afura. Sometimes it's spelled Afra, sometimes it's spelled Afu, Ra, plural, Fu. The U is the plural and so forth. So Afura, the spirit moving in matter. Just like solar energy penetrating the earth, when it gets inside of the earth and heats the earth up, that solar energy that's inside the earth becomes its house or place of residence or its flesh. So the fire is in the flesh, the fire is in the matter, the fire is in the Afu. So it becomes Afu, fire, or Ra's energy becomes Afura. And Ra'et, and she is right here as the mistress of the boat, Nebwa. She's Afu Ra'et. So and then we show how let's just go down real quick. You'll see that the terms Ka, it means soul, but it also means high land, land above the banks of the river, the land upon which the God of creation first stood, and so forth. Ka, Kayat, and spelled with the Q, but it's really the symbol itself. The terrace, the slope is the Ka sound, so it's also written with the K sound and so forth, and the K in Coptic. So it's the land Ka of Afura. Afura Ka is the land of the creator, land of the creatress. It's the primordial land, the divine land, and we go through the cosmology to prove that. So when we talk about being Afurakani people, Afuraitkaitnit people, children of Afura and Afurait, children of the divine land and so forth, every time we say, I'm of Afuraka, I'm the Ka of Afura, the soul of Afura, the Kait of Afurait, the soul of Afurait, but also the land of Afura, the land of the creator, the land of the creatress. As an Afurakani man, I'm invoking the divinity Afura and the deity Ka. As a woman, when she says, I'm an Afuraitkaitnit woman, or Afuraitkaitnit woman, she's invoking Afurait. Every time she says that, she's invoking that divinity. So, but we go into detail about that in that particular text. When we get into I just want to show you a couple of things in the book so you're aware of the kinds of things that you will see. The next book in the anthology is Kuku Tuntum, the Ancestral Jurisdiction. And we talk about the cosmology of creation, but we also go into details showing that the various fictional characters of the Bible, Quran, Talmud, and so forth never existed. So you'll see here, for example, the male divinity of divine wisdom with the head of the crane and so forth, the habwi bird, the so-called ibis and so forth, Tahuti, who is called Ma'al She, which means true Ma'al of She, word or voice, one who speaks the divine law. He's the spokesperson of the creator and creatress of the divine land. And he has his assistant, the baboon called Akan, and we saw an image of that baboon before. So you have Ma, She, and Akan here. Let me expand that for you a little bit. And when you're looking at the cosmology as laid out in the Book of the Cow of Heaven, a sacred text that you can find in the tomb of Tutankhamen, as well as the tomb of Seti the First. So when you go to Kemet, and we've taken pictures of that full text on the wall in one of the chambers in the tomb of Seti, when they talk about how Ra went up into the heavenly realm and he made Tahuti his representative on earth. He called him Ma'al Sher. He gave him the assistant Anan. He made Tahuti the divine scribe, and he scribed the divine law and so forth. And he said the people who follow Tahuti will be led to the Sekhet Hetep, the divine field Sekhet of Hetep, peace and sacred offerings. So Ma'al Sher, the one who is true of voice and word, and his assistant Anan became Moshe and Aran, or Moshe and Aran, or Moses and Aaron and so forth, who were Moses becoming the lawgiver, leading the people to the promised land. They stole the entire story from the cosmology of the divinity Tahuti and Aran. He goes up to see Ra in the mountains in the form of a divine light. That's where they get Moses going to see the burning bush and so forth. We go into all of that, showing that that character never existed. Abraham never existed. Isaac, Ishmael never existed. There were no Hebrews, no black ones, no white ones. They didn't exist at all. They were not Akan or Eve or Lemba or Igbo or any of that nonsense. They did not exist. So we show that the moon divinity Yah, as you can see right here, the divinity Yah, also called Yahweh. This is where they get Yahweh from and so forth. That is the divinity of the moon. There's Yah or Yahweh. And there's also the female divinity of the moon, Yahwet. They don't tell you about Yahwet. They just tell you about Yahu or Yahweh, because, of course, they stole the information. Yahweh is a fictional character who never existed. They stole a title of the moon divinity, just the male one, not the female one, and then took that title, corrupted it, and added it to their own personality and said it was the divinity in the mountains. So there are a number of different things that we go over with regard to that, but that's all in the text. Of course, the male deity Ptah, which the whites and their offspring corrupted his name and cosmology. into Buddha. So even when you look at Ptah and Sekhmet, his wife, but then Ptah is also connected with the female divinity Bast, the cat divinity. When they talk about the two different wives of Buddha and so forth, they stole the entire thing. There was no Buddha. There was no black Buddha walking around in India 2,500 years ago. They stole the name and the cosmology directly from fragments of the cosmology of Ptah. And some of our people are running around saying, well, actually, Buddha was a black man, so we can practice Buddhism. He didn't exist. Neither did Mahavira. Didn't exist. So, and we prove that. We do the same thing with the male divinity Hop Met, which is the northern Met, Hop, Nile. Then his twin is Hop Reset, the southern Reset, Nile, and so forth. The word for Mu, water in Kemet, is Mu. So Muhap Reset is the waters Mu of Hop Reset, the southern Nile. And then Muhap Met is the waters Mu of Hop Met, the northern Nile. Muhammad was corrupted into Muhammad, and they said it was a little character running around in Arabia. Muhammad never existed. They corrupted the name of the deity Muhammad, the waters of the northern Nile. So when you go to Kemet and you get in the water, and you're standing in the water and so forth, the energy moving through the northern branch of the river is Mu Hop Met. The water is Mu of Hop Met, the Nile Hop North Met. And when you're in southern Kemet, near Aswan and so forth, and you put your hand in the water and so forth, step in the water, you're in the waters Mu of Hop, the deity Reset, the southern Nile. Since the Whites and Offspring invaded northern Kemet and took over when the Arabs took over 1,400 years ago, they were accustomed to the invocations of our people of Muhammad, and they started saying Muhammad was a white Arab who came and brought the Islam and so forth. So we show where they stole that entire story from and the whole cosmology of that. So in the Kukutuntun, we go into detail about those various things. That, by the way, is another form of Ptah with the solar disc on his head. The illuminated ones, when they say Ptah or Buddha became illuminated and so forth, that's where they get that from. Here you have Amen and Amenet, the great father and the great mother. It's another image of Amen and Amenet sitting side by side. If you know what you're looking for, when you go to Kemet, you will see Amen and Amenet on the temples and the columns and so forth. But then you have individuals who, there's Merit, that's the title of Auset, Merit. This is where they get Mary from and so forth. Auset and Heru, Merit and Khensu and so forth. So, of course, Jesus is a fictional cartoon character as well. Go into detail about that. But when you know where to look, you will see Amen is the great God. Amenet is the great goddess. Ra and Rita, the creator and creatress. They are grandchildren of the Supreme Being. So Amen and Amenet direct the creator and creatress to go out and create the world. Just as you, as the great being, you direct your life force energy to move to different parts of your body, like your chi energy and so forth, which we call ki. You're the great being that directs that solar force within you, that Ra force within you. Amen and Amenet direct Ra and Ra'et, the creator and creative energy power to move throughout and create and sustain the universe. So Amen and Amenet are the great mother and father supreme being. Ra and Ra'et are the creator and creatress, who are grandchildren of the supreme being. So people study actual cosmology, and that's reflected throughout the continent of Afurakani. Amen and Amenet in ancient Kemet are Inyame and Inyamewa and Akan and so forth. Ra and Ra'et are in Yonkumpon and in Yonkunton in the Akan tradition. We understand the balance of male and female. There are many people who travel to Kemet and come back and tell you that there's the temples of Amen Ra. They never showed you an image of Ra'et. They don't even know she exists. They just know about Ra. They'll show you multiple pictures of Amen. They'll stand and take pictures in front of him. Amenet is actually holding his hand, standing right next to him, and they walk right by her because they've been conditioned to only focus on the masculine because they've been studying what the whites in our spring teach. And Aminet's right there. Her name is right there by her face. She's holding Amin's hand and so forth, or sitting next to him. And they take a picture of him and they just keep walking. So that's how we've been conditioned. Even the ones, some people who consider Afrocentric, they've been doing that. Another expression of that, and one of the books in this anthology, just so you can have a better understanding. And I'm not going to go through all of them. I just want to show you a couple of pages because I don't want to keep you too much longer. When I was in the tomb of Ramesu III, I took this image of Ma'at, the female divinity of divine law and balance. She is actually Odu in the Yoruba tradition, the female Orisha Odu and so forth. And when I was in the tomb of Ramesu VI, I took this image of the male deity Ma'at. So there's a male deity of divine law and balance. There's a female divinity of divine law and balance. You have individuals who've been traveling to Kemet for 20 years and taking people on study tours, and they've mentioned Ma'at, and they have 100 pictures of Ma'at. But the male deity Ma'al, one half of the divine law that governs all of creation, they don't even know he exists. He exists in all of the various traditions on the continent. People who practice authentic expressions of that, they know about Ma'al and Ma'at. In Akan, he's Abam Kofi, and so forth. He's the male twin divinity. And then you have Amame. She's the female twin divinity. That is the female force of divine law and balance. Both of them exist in Akan culture. They exist in the Yoruba tradition when you study the origin of twins, the Ibeji in Yoruba, and those twin Orisha, the female twin and the male twin who were children of Orunmila and so forth. You'll see that that's actually Ma'al, Ma'at in the Yoruba tradition. But all the groups have these male and female forces of divine law and balance. People just don't know where to look sometimes because we've been conditioned. And if you've been conditioned even on the continent, Islam corrupted the minds of our people, Christianity, Judaism. So you'll see people practicing traditional religion, and it's been infected with Islam, but it doesn't show on the outside initially until they start talking about the culture, and it becomes very patriarchal. They'll say that there's one God. They'll say Olodumare is the one God of the Yoruba religion, or Nyame is the one true God, and so forth. That's how you know it's been corrupted, because Olodumare is the creative power. Oshumare is the female creative power. And Olorun and Olokun are the great father and great mother. In Akan, Inyame is the great father. Inyame Wa is the great mother. Those who've been corrupted in Akan tradition in Ghana and Ivory Coast, they'll talk about the male divinity, and they've forgotten who the female deity is because they've been corrupted by Western white culture. So we bring back the actual balance because these are the forces that govern creation. Ma'al, Ma'at are the male and female forces of balance that are balancing the earth right now. They are prominent during the spring equinox. They are the balancing forces of night and day and so forth, the poles that are balancing the earth and so forth. Without Ma'al, Ma'at, these expansive and contractive forces of balance, everything on earth will fall apart. So, and we invoke them directly. So I just want to show a few, things with regard to that. But when we talk about, for example, once again, that's Tuhuti, the male deity of divine wisdom. This is Seshat, the female divinity of divine wisdom. When you go to Apet Reset, or so-called Luxor, this is on the back of, there's a great colossal statue of Ramesu II seated on a throne, and you look on the back of the throne and you'll see Tahuti and Seshat together, which the whites in our spring call Thoth and so forth. But very often you just see the male deity of divine wisdom. They'll say he's the god of wisdom. Well, she's the goddess of wisdom. He's the divine scribe, This is where they stole Moses from. She's the female scribe, and they both are shown with the scribe implements. So there's always a balance of male and female because that's the reality of creation. And we always highlight that. And I'll just show you a couple more, then we'll be done with that. Of course, we already showed you the Modern Chi book, our book Uben Sheng, The Nature of the Soul. So we wrote a whole book on the cosmology of the Ka, the Okra, the soul, divine consciousness. Same as Order Inu and Yoruba and so forth, but in the Akan tradition, the nature of the soul. We have the etymology and cosmology of the term God in ancient Kemet, which is a title of Amen and Amenet. It's Gan, which was corrupted from Gan into God in English and so forth, but is stolen directly from a title of the divinities. That's one book. The next book in the anthology is the Kokobo book, where we show in the text of Kemet the divine prohibition against dissexuality, homosexuality in the texts of ancient Kemet. Full text, we examine the text in the Medut and Total, the hieroglyphs and so forth, going into detail to prove that we've always had a prohibition against dissexuality, homosexuality. It's the whites and their offspring who seek to import that discordant practice and try to make it appear that we've embraced that, but of course we never have. So, and if you don't study the text themselves, they'll simply lie about it and say we embraced it. This is Kunem. We talked about Kunem, the potter divinity, and the 7 pots that he has with the 7 Kunem divinities. Here he is on the potter's wheel, fusing together the soul and the body and so forth. But he's the one that has the 7 pots. Instead of, as we said before, instead of 7 lotuses, there are 7 pots, shrines of energy in your body. Those are the 7 kara, chakras and so forth. So let me just scroll down. So we already showed you, we have the book Ankh, the origin of the term yoga, Kara Kasa, origin and nature of the chakra. And I'll just show you the other couple of books that we have as part of the anthology. By the way, when you see the Aku Abdal and Akan culture, that is the Ankh from ancient Kemet, preserved. And in the hoodoo tradition in North America, the hoodoo doll baby is the Akuba. Of course, certain Ankhs are anthropomorphic with arms and hands and so forth, just like you have in our Akan culture. Some people are unaware of that. Another Ankh with arms and legs and so forth. So when our Akan people sometimes show an Akuba doll with arms and legs and so forth, it's because we've always done that. The Ankh actually represents a tree. And in our Akan culture, the human body is called Unipadria, which is, we're considered like a tree. The hair is the foliage, the arms are the branches and so forth. And this is what the Ankh is. We are Ankhs. We are Akuba, we are Ankhs, male and female. We are Ankh structures. We have a whole book showing that Tuhuti manifests in the various traditions as Sankofa in Akan, Fa in Vodun, Ifa in Yoruba, same divinity. We show its cosmology in the various traditions and so forth. And we also talk about Seshat, the female divinity of divine wisdom as well. Hold on a second. We also have our and if you have any questions, you can post them in the chat room. We're about to get to the questions and then we'll be done. So if you have any questions, post them in the chat room now. we have our book Rekit Hinasperet. Rekit Hinasperet is the etymology and cosmology of the terms religion and spirit. We show in the Medutu the term religion. Re means backward again, and religion comes from legio, leg, legi. That re comes from rer in ancient Kemet, which means back or again. And leg or legi or legio comes from reki, rekyu in ancient Kemet. And we show the Medutu that proves all of that. And then the term seperet is a term from ancient Kemet as well. It does not come from Europeans. It doesn't mean breath. So you have people saying, oh, spirit just means breath. They are misinformed because, the whites and offspring stole the term from seper, from our people. As you can see here, seperet, talking about ritual invocation or prayers, talking about invoking the energy of Ra and Right, specifically the divine solar fire energy through seperet or ritual invocatory process. So, but we go into detail about that to later rest these false notions. We have Kemet, Hena, and Toro, the Black nation and divinity, showing the terms Kemet as well as Toro in the Akan language, meaning the same things as they do in ancient Khanid and Kemet. And then the final book that we published in this anthology is the book Moor Means Dead, showing that the term Moor actually means dead. Black doesn't mean death. That's nonsense. The whole Moorish ideology is pure foolishness, totally inaccurate. Their pseudo-etymologies have always been nonsensical, and we show the actual origin of the term in ancient Kemet. Moor means dead, physically, socially, and spiritually, on every level, and we show that in the Medut and Toro and in the cosmology. So, and in an expansion from the original text, when we first wrote the book, we had all this information, but we expanded upon that. And one of the things that we added in the expanded version that you only have in the print version of the book that we just released, this, by the way, is Merit, Shema, Merit, Met, the female divinities of the Nile River. So you have Hap, Met, and Hapreset, the twin divinities of the northern and southern Nile, where they get Muhammad from and so forth, Muhammad. But then you have Merit, Shema, and Merit, Met, Merit of the south and Merit of the north, the female forces of the Nile River. This is Hap, Met, and Hapreset, the male deities of the river, twin deities, and these are the female divinities of the river. But we also show here the etymology. Well, first, you've seen this in this image in the book by Sheikh Anta Diop, showing in the tomb of Ramesu III, when they were showing on the left here the image of the people of Kemet, then the Amu in Western Asia and so forth, quote unquote, Amuru and so forth, Amorites and so forth. Then you have the Nkosu, quote unquote, people southern Kemet, Nubians, people of ancient Kush and so forth. As you can see, they're dressed the same way and they look the same as the people of Kemet. And then you have the Tamahu. At that point, the Arab type had already invaded northern Afurakani, northern Africa and the regions of Libya and so forth. So some of them were there. So they were showing the 4 different races that existed in Kemet at the time, at that particular time and so forth. And of course, the Black people of Kemet, the Black people of Khanid or Nubia are the same people. And that's a well-known, Sheikh Anta Diop showed that. But what we did is when we went to Kemet and we went to the tomb of Ramesu III, we took the actual pictures from what this painting was taken from. In the tomb, there's not just 4 of them. The 4 of them do exist, but there are 4 each of each one of them. So there are 4 images of the Kemeti individual. There are 4 images of the Amu individual. There are 4 images of the Nkasu individual. There are 4 images of the Tamahu individual. We just took one of each, but there are actually 4 of each one on the walls. So as you can see from the actual images, this is the one from Kemet. This is how they depicted themselves as black-skinned individuals. When they drew this, they were drawing. This is the actual photo I took with my camera. This is the Amu individual. As you can see here, they drew him. This is the Nehesu Nkosu individual, and this is the Tamahu individual. So we went back to get the primary source material, so we're not dependent on the images that other people take, including the images that are being repainted and redrawn by the Arabs now. They are going and making the noses more pointy. They're lightening up the skin on the murals and statues and so forth. They are changing the colors. They're doing that. They've been doing that for years. So we need to get this information before they completely, destroy all of them. But another thing that we do, and this is the last image I want to show you. Hold on a second. Okay, so we show you here the etymology of the term black itself. And you'll see they'll talk about it being from Proto-Indo-European root bel or belek and berek. So ber or bel and so forth. The rolling R and the L is the same. So we show the Proto-Indo-European lexicon, University of Texas and so forth, and these Proto-Indo-European roots. But then we show the actual origin. Berek or bele comes from bere or biri in Akan, bere in ancient Kemet. That is the black pyramidion, the capstone, the bre, reduplicated, but it's bere. This bere is where they get bere, which means to shine, to burn, but also glittering and white, to shine, to glisten. And the cosmology associated with that is when they talk about, well, black means pale or white or shining, but it also means to burn and so forth. That black pyramidion, which is I took that picture in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo when I was there. Originally, these pyramids, these meru, had black capstones on the top, and the body was white limestone. So they were smooth white limestone with a black pyramidion, or sometimes the pyramidion capstone was electrum, like shining gold, white electrum. So when the sun would hit it, it would, illuminate for, miles around and so forth. But sometimes there was a black capstone that was reminiscent of the primordial black mound that rose up at the beginning of creation, the first landmass of Earth. So when the sun would set on the mountains in the west, that's akin to a solar energy penetrating the first mound that rose up out of the primordial waters. And when that sun set and penetrated that primordial mound, it fired up the primordial mound, it blackened the primordial mound, it hardened the primordial mound. So that fire energy, once it hit that first landmass and a spark happened, it fired it up, just like you fire up some charcoal and so forth. When the solar energy first penetrated the first primordial mound that rose up out the ocean, it hardened it, burned it, blackened it, and that became the first landmass of Earth. And then our bodies were fashioned from that primordial bere, or that bere landmass, that bere, which became bere, or bele, or belek, or black and so forth. Our bodies came from that. So the fools who talk about black means death, that's pure stupidity. It's based on self-hatred. They don't want to be black. They don't want to use the term black because they hate themselves. So that Moorish nonsense is ridiculous. So again, that is, you look on the back, there are 12 books in the, so it's pretty big book. You see it's covering my whole body, but we wanted to get all of the true historical books that we published in here. So this is available on our website now. I know people are boycotting Amazon. We are on Amazon. And let me just show you that real quick. And then I'll get to the questions in the chat room. Okay. So this is the page on our website. You'll see the so that's the front cover of the book. This is the back cover. You'll see the 12 books, and you'll see the descriptions of them and so forth. We did a short video explaining that. Now, when you look on, let me just show you this real quick. Okay. So when you go on Amazon, you'll see Odwirafo. We priced it as a big book and it's in color, so they charge you a lot to print that. So the book is $75 on Amazon because of the color price. If I had done it in black and white, I could have done it for like $49.95 or something. But since Amazon takes 60% from all authors, plus they charge you the printing fee, it greatly reduces. For example, if I sold the book for $49.95 on Amazon, after they take their 60% and the amount for the printing, because it's in color, I would get like $4 or something. That's the breakdown. So that's the price of doing business as far as using a distributor. So some people use Amazon just to get the word out, why the distributor, to know the book that exists, but then people order directly from someone's website and they can give you a lesser price. Now, if I printed in black and white, it would be much cheaper, and I would, it would make sense to sell it on Amazon. But color costs so much more, way much more money to print, because it's color and ink and everything else. So they charge you a lot more. So it's easier. I can give it to you for 30% off directly from the website. I needed for you to see like the images of Afura, the images of Afuraitkait, the creator and creatress, Amen, Amenet, Ma'an, Ma'at. You need to actually see what they actually look like, as opposed to having all these images in just black and white trying to save money. So, but you'll see it here. But when we go back to the web page, and you click on the web page, you will see it's a couple of things. So it's on the web page, it is just $55 plus. Hold on a second, it's not popping up. All right. On the web page, it's $55 plus shipping. So instead of $75, it's $55, plus shipping, which is $63 total. But what we also have, let me make sure you can see it. Okay, you should see it now. Okay, so it's $55 plus shipping, and we also have an option when you check out. You can split the payment into 4. So there's this option for Afterpay. You see it says 4 interest-free payments of $15.75. So you can check out and you can choose the option for Afterpay, and you give them your email address and everything, and then you would pay $15.75 up front, and then you get the book, and then over the next, I think however they set it up, every 2 weeks or something, you pay $15 until it's paid off. So you have that option, or the 55, so the 70 or 30% off. So that's what it's easier for people to order via the website. Okay, so that is the information I wanted to share with everybody. I want to go through these questions in the chat room just to make sure. And also, when we were talking about the SUSUW course, the meditation instructor certification course, the next course is coming up. Hold on a second. The next one begins Monday coming up. So if you would like to register for SUSUW, it's a 4-week course. So you can become certified as a meditation instructor. And again, you're instructing people on basic, it's an introductory level. You're taking people through a 20-minute, 30-minute, or whatever you contract. It may be contracting them for a half an hour session where you introduce yourself, do like a 15-minute meditation session, and then you have a discussion afterwards. Or if they want you there for an hour, you do an introduction, do a longer meditation session, maybe 20, 25 minutes, then you have a discussion after, and so forth. Introductory, whether it's youth or adults, places of business, whatever it is. You have the certification. You can utilize that certification for funding sources and so forth. And you can go to any organization, they see your certification, and they can pay you to conduct these sessions. And as we said, most people pay between $100 and $200, sometimes $300 to come out and do like a 30-minute meditation session with their employees or their youth or their organization, community organization, and so forth. So, but this is a way to empower our people economically, but you're also impacting the community in a positive capacity. So, but if you would like to, and of course it's open to Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, African Black people only. We only certify our people in our courses. So if you would like to join that course, engage in some entrepreneurial activity and get that certification, that starts Monday. And we have payment plan options for that as well. We have the Afterpay as well, so you can break up the registration fee into 4 separate payments if you want to. So we have all of that. And I'll put the link in the chat room for both of those. So the Homa link is the first one. That's the book. And the SUSUW link is the second one. That is the certification course. We have a few more spaces available for the certification course. So if you would like to join that, that starts Monday, you can register today. All right. And yet I'll say, we thank everybody for tuning in. I'm seeing some of the comments. Michiawo. So ask about the fasting period. So for us, the fasting period during this time, for us, some people, since our 13-day observance starts tomorrow, Yauda, Thursday, the 13th, it'll be the 13th up until the equinox. But some people, and most people, will fast on the day of the equinox, the balancing point day. And that is, this year is March 20th. So next Yauda, next Thursday, March 20th, is the day of the equinox. And this is the day that we would, encourage Black people just in general. You don't have to be Akan or Yoruba, whatever it is. You're Black people in North America. We live on this region of Afua, the fertile earth mother. There's also Asasaya, the barren earth mother, the twin earth mother divinities. This is the high time for the fertile earth mother and so forth. So because we're in this region of her body, in the northern hemisphere of her body, this is the time for that balancing point. And we want to recalibrate ourselves physically and spiritually. So at least on that day, we would do that. All right. Okay, Yedase, we appreciate that. Okay, just want to make sure I didn't miss any comments. Okay, so it says, as it relates to the book, Kwesi, how much of your information did you get, not only from normal research, but revelations given to you from the deities and ancestral spirits? So it's a combination of both. So there's nothing that we put forward in these texts, or the things that you see that we publish or we talk about, because of the nature of the information, the way our people have been cultivated. I'm not just going to say the Nananom Nsamafo, the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors. And yet I say to those who posted the super chats, we appreciate that support. I'm never going to just say, hey, the Nsamafo, our ancestresses and ancestors, they gave me this information, I want to give it to you. They'll give me information, they'll give you information, they give children information. As long as you're Black, your Nsamafo are going to communicate with you. But anything that they show me or direct me towards, I'll receive that, but then I'll ask them to direct me to physical, tangible evidence of what they've shown me spiritually. So then I can investigate it, verify it, publish it, and then share it. So then we take it from the spiritual to the physical, or from Osoro to Asase, meaning from heaven to earth. So that way people are not dependent on, oh, well, this brother said this and it came from his ancestors, so this is why I follow it. We're not doing that. We're not having people follow what we're saying, because we've had enough of people doing that. Even if it's true, we've had enough of people following what somebody said because they said a spirit told them that. Even if it's true, even if you got divination from somebody, when people have come to me for divination, Adebisa and so forth, we can do the divination. But they still have to go to their ancestresses and ancestors to verify that. And they do, and then it's verified. But no matter what anybody tells you, whether they're an elder, elderess, young person, whatever it is, excuse me, you're still going to need to verify. That's part of our culture. That's part of our process. We don't just blindly accept something. You know, little children, they trust their mothers and fathers and elders and eldresses and so forth. But it's incumbent upon you as an adult, even if you receive some sound advice or direction from somebody who has some spiritual information, as an adult, it's incumbent upon you to attune to your Kra, the divinity that governs your head, to verify that before you make a decision. So it's a combination of both. We receive things, but then we get the physical, tangible evidence. We went to Kemet to get these images and prove this language, compare it with the Akan language, show the comparisons of both languages, the deities, the terms, the functions, the etymologies, and so forth. So it's no belief involved. Okay. Okay, it was a question about dinosaurs and so forth. So yeah, I mean, there have been dinosaurs or animals. There are bones in different places, so everything can be verified. Anytime someone is talking about some information, if they're just putting out something and just trying to make you believe it, look for the evidence, and that the evidence is going to be there. If it exists, the evidence is going to be there. All right. Okay, so I think that's the. I don't want to go too much further beyond this 2-hour point. So, yeah, if you have any questions, of course, send us an email. But Yedase to those who, for the super chats once again, Yedase to those who have purchased the book so far and did the pre-orders. We're getting the first. So the way we do it is we put in an order. In fact, this one right here. They sent this one to us. We received this on February 27th. This is the first author's copy, a proof copy. Got it in the mail. Took them over a week, actually a week and a half, because they have to print it first. So we got it, went through it. I saw it was a couple of offset errors. I updated that, and then I saw it was another error. So I sent in the update, the clarification and so forth. The update was authorized. So everybody who did the pre-order, those orders are in. So they have to print those and then ship them to us. So we should be getting the first shipment soon, within the next few days or something like that. And those who did those pre-orders, we're going to, because the book is now, the proper version is out. There were just a few pages that were off because a few lines were pushed down, and it pushed everything down by like a page and so forth. And then there were a couple of typos and a couple other things that we had to correct, a couple of things we had to insert, but everything is straight now. So we'll get the first set of books that people ordered. As soon as we get them, we'll ship them out to you. And then, as people order, we do it on demand. So when people order, we'll place an order with Amazon, so they'll ship them to us because we can get them at the print cost. And that way we can sell it to you for $55 instead of $75. And then even if you do the afterpay, you can break that $55 up into $15.75 payments. So it's easier for you as well. So, but that's how we'll do that. Okay, so I say we thank everybody for tuning in, and Yebeshia Bio, we will meet again.